Okay, just got back from the Elite Series tournament, the first one of 2021. St. John's River, Florida. Tidal fishery can be kind of difficult. Practice was very difficult. Practice, I had 8 or 9 bites. That's it. I was there 3 days, 8 or 9 bites, and 5 of those came out of one area, but it was a long run. I didn't feel that it was really going to work out. So the tournament, the first 2 days, I actually ended up going to Rodman Reservoir. Unbelievable fishery. They catch 10, 12, 13, I think even 15-pound fish out of there on shiners all the time. We can't use shiners, so we're stuck with artificials, but I still managed to do okay. The first day, I go up there, lock through. We have a fog delay, so that stresses everybody out, but we had a couple-hour fog delay. Locked up there at 11 o'clock and ended up catching a few fish. There were some fish on beds. I knew where they were. So did several other people. Clark Wendelin, Bernie Schultz, Matt Robertson, all these guys, great fishermen. They knew exactly where these fish were too. They found the same ones. So we go in there, we each kind of split off to the fish that we wanted to try to catch. And I started out fishing with my power drop shot. Great bait all around. Everybody knows that I throw it a good bit and works even on spawning fish. So I was throwing a 7-foot medium light Zodius rod, Shimano Stratic 4000 CI4 reel, same reel I always throw. Great reel, big spool, fast line recovery, easy to handle. It's a bigger reel, so it's not some tiny reel you have to really be careful with. Nice big T handle to grab hold of. I always use 15-pound Super Slick 8 Power Pro. This tournament, now I usually use on my leaders 8, 10, 12-pound line at most. This tournament, because we're in Florida and there were plenty of 7, 8, and 9-pound fish caught, I used 15-pound Berkeley 100% fluorocarbon. That's tough line. I have a lot of confidence in it, and it's been great line for me. Always use a G-Finesse all-purpose Gamakatsu worm hook. Nano coating, super sharp, slick, penetrates well, even if you don't get a good hook set. And that hook didn't let me down this tournament. This is a 6.5-inch quiver, green pumpkin flash, very versatile, great color. 1/8-ounce sinker, not a terribly large sinker. I wasn't fishing very deep. I was fishing maybe anywhere from 2 to 4 feet. The water up in Rodman is a little clearer, so those fish do bed a little deeper, and I bet the big ones bed even deeper that you can't really see. So I fished that for some bedding fish on the first day. Ended up catching 3. Wasn't in great shape after the first day. Only had about 7 pounds, was in 62nd, 63rd place, something like that. With the fog delay, people didn't really catch them that well, so I wasn't out of it. Ended up the next 2 days, went up to Rodman the second day, caught 17 pounds, moved up into the standings, into the cut, into 40th place. Next day went out, 17 pounds again. Didn't catch those in Rodman. So I ended up 30th place overall. I caught my biggest fish of the tournament on a wacky worm. So I was using a Missile Baits 48 and June bug, great color in Florida, great color all around. And I'm using the Stinger G-Finesse hook. And this is the weedless one. It's got 2 little titanium weed guards, and I really think this is the best wacky hook you can that's made. It has a little longer shank, the Stinger hook does, than traditional wacky hooks that are kind of more of a circle shape. And I just feel more comfortable in the way that those seem to hook fish and hold on to them. So that's what I throw. Again, not really messing around too much with light line. I have a 15-pound fluorocarbon leader on it. Derrick Hudnall, who did extremely well in the tournament and used basically the same exact setup, he was using straight braid. He didn't even mess with fluorocarbon. I was in some clearer water, so I did, in fact, use the fluorocarbon. I don't know if it helped or hurt, but that's what I was using. I beefed up my equipment a little as far as the rod goes. 7-foot, 2-inch, medium heavy X-Pride spinning rod. Not exactly very finessey. Not the bait not the rod you want to use if you're skipping docks or having to cast accurately. I'd use something with a little more flex to it. It just seems like I can cast better with those. But this was guerrilla combat with some of these fish on this wacky worm. You know, I caught a 5.5, a couple other decent fish on it that second day, and it really managed to propel me into the third day. The third day was unusual. Ended up making a decision to go into a canal, and after I got in there, we had a little fog delay. After I got in there, I just liked the feeling of it and decided not to go to Rodman because I had beaten my fish up pretty bad. So had a couple other anglers, Clark Wendelin again, great bed fisherman. I watched him catch fish that I thought were uncatchable, but he proved me wrong. Clark was up there, Bernie was up there, Matt Robertson. So I chose not to go up there. I went to these canals, and my gut feeling to stay there was terrible. At noon, I had 0 fish, nothing. So I'm watching my tournament fade away and losing Angler of the Year points. And I decided to run to one of the springs that I had caught 1 fish in practice in the spring. So I go in there. It's a long run, long idle to get into these springs on the west side of Lake George. And I go up to where I was fishing, and another competitor was pretty much dead on my waypoint. And there were 2 other extremely good anglers in there. And we were all doing the same thing. And I don't like just always doing the same thing as everybody. So I was a little frustrated figuring out what am I going to do, because I've kind of committed to this for about the rest of the day since it's 1 o'clock and I don't have but maybe an hour to fish. So I had a flashback to my teenage years in a tournament that I fished on Aquia Creek off the Potomac River under similar circumstances. Kind of cloudy, spawning or immediate post-spawn, a bit of pressure on the place, lower water. And that tournament, I won that tournament fishing a jerkbait in maybe 1 or 2 feet of water. Very shallow, unusual for a jerkbait bite. But so what I did, I said I'm going to go to the bank and try it. I go up to the bank with a jerkbait, like this, similar to this chrome mixed stick, and I probably didn't go 100 feet, and I caught a 5. And at that point, I was happy. It was the first fish I put in the boat all day, and again, it was probably 110 at that point, I guess. Go up another 50 feet, and I lose a 4. So I'm like, okay, there's something to this. Go up another 100 feet, catch a 1.75 pound fish. So I'm happy. I'm onto something, but I don't have much time. I've got maybe 45 minutes left to fish in this salt springs before I have to run back up towards the weigh-in and fish those canals that were a failure for me early in the day. I'm going to give them another shot. So I bounce around a little bit, come to one other stretch that looks right, has the right depth, the bank looks right. It's not just sawgrass. It has some other stuff on it that indicated to me the bottom might be a little bit harder, and it just looked better. And I immediately lose a 2-pounder, so I'm pretty frustrated. Then I catch a 4. And then I go up about another 50 feet, and I catch a 2.5, 2.75 pound fish. So I've got 4 fish. I got to go. It takes forever to idle out of this place. It's a manatee zone. There's a limit at Lake George that you can't run within a long way of the shoreline. It's 1,000 yards, or I think it's 1,000 yards, but it's a lot. So I go back up to my canals up by the ramp, and it's, I probably have all of 45 minutes to fish. Pull into the first canal, pick up my trusty drop shot, confident I'm going to get something, going to catch something in it, and I pitch around, and I don't get any bites. So I've got probably 15 minutes left before I have to leave, 20 minutes left. Go around to the other canal that's close by where I lost a 2-pounder, 2.5 pounder the afternoon before. Didn't affect my weight that day, but I lost it, and I knew where he was. So I go up to this seawall, and there's pads out in front of it, and these fish seem to like to spawn in between the pads and the seawall. And so I flip back in there with the drop shot right where I had lost that fish, because I was confident he was still in the area, and I thought I could catch him. And so I flip around. I just seine the place. 6 inches, a foot at a time. I'm casting in this place for 10 minutes. Nothing. So I've got maybe 3 or 4 minutes left. So I go up the into the canal a little further. There's another seawall. There's many seawalls with pads out in front, but I get to the next one. I pitch up there, good cast, with this bait, and sinks down. I look down at my clock. I've got about 3 minutes before I have to start idling out of the canal. I look up, and my bait's about 10 feet out in the canal. So I reel up, set the hook, have a quick fight, and throw a 2 3/4 pound fish in the boat with probably 2 minutes before I have to leave. So I drive in, ended up weighing 17.1, I think, that day. Ended up in 30th place. Great start on the St. John's. Did have a couple of interesting things happen during the tournament. Going into the lock on the second day, going up to Rodman, the lock master is waving us off, to basically stop as we enter the lock. And he's telling us there's actually 3 manatees that came out of the St. John's River and were going into the lock. So they're in the lock with us. We all troll and motor in and grab our ropes and the floats that go up and down the sides of the lock. And they actually locked through and went into Rodman. Unusual. And in that lock, we also saw Johnny Morris, the owner of Bass Pro Shops. He loves the St. John's, has a house down there, was down there, I think, for the Daytona 500. And so he was on a trip, guided trip, and he was coming out of the St. John's, going into Rodman to shiner fish because, again, like I said, they catch 10, 12, 13, 15-pound bass in that lake on shiners. So that was kind of cool, saw him. That second day, one of the only things that I regret about that tournament, we all lose fish, but I had to fish that second day that there was a very sparse pad bed. And in that sparse pad bed, there was just 1 pad here, 2 pads over here. There was 1 clump of 5, 6, 7 pads. And it just stuck out to me. You couldn't see these because they were flats of the water until you got up on top of them, really. So if you were 30 yards away, you'd never even see this pad bed was there. So I catch a 2.5, which didn't help me at the time. And I go up to this clump of 7 pads, 6, 7 pads. And I flip my weightless worm up there, and it's sinking down, and my line just ticks, and it starts moving off kind of slow. So I think, this is over. I'm going to get him, because with that Gamakatsu hook, you get the hook into him, you're going to catch that fish. So I reel down to him, take out all the slack, pull back, ease into him, reel, and it doesn't move. And he goes the other way, takes out a little bit of drag, and then I only had maybe 30 feet of line out, if that. I could feel his head shaking, and then it just pulled out. I never got the hook into him. And on Rodman and in Florida, you never know what that fish could have been. I can tell you it wasn't a 3-pounder, but who knows? Maybe it was a 5. Maybe it was a 15. You never can tell. But that's the only fish that really bothered me, and it's probably going to bother me for a while because it's something. You go to Florida, you want to weigh in a giant fish. I was lucky enough to weigh in 2 5-pounders during the tournament. Again, a great start, 30th place. We've got Tennessee in about a week. I've got a couple days of work in the office before I go down there, but we'll be leaving at some point this weekend, and it's going to be a much different tournament, but hopefully I do about as well, if not better.